Over the course of Goku's journey, he has encountered a number of incredibly powerful opponents. Be it humans, aliens, or gods, these enemies have pushed Goku to his limits and forced him to overcome them. But who among them is Goku's greatest enemy? Well, in this video, we're going to discuss that. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and enable notifications so you can see all of my content right away when it comes out. Alright guys, so joining me in this video today is someone you've seen on my videos in the past. His name is Geekdom 101. How's it going?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm doing alright. So in this video, we're going to be doing an in-depth examination of who we believe Goku's greatest enemy is in the Dragon Ball franchise. However, we're not going to get into every single one of them because we'd be here all day. Instead, we're going to examine the biggest heavy hitters of the series, or the ones who are the most impactful on him as enemies. So we're going to begin with the original Dragon Ball and make our way through all of the subsequent series. Now first to begin, I think we should give an honorable mention to Emperor Pilaf, who served as Goku's first real villain in the Dragon Ball story. So what are your general thoughts on Emperor Pilaf?
Well, I think with Pilaf, he's not gonna challenge Goku strength or even intelligently. He was a comic relief villain, and he was the first major villain, but again, he's just not somebody who I consider one of the great villains, but he is one that is iconic for Dragon Ball, and one who's still around. I mean, he kept coming back, and he's in Super now. He's even in the Broly movie. He has a cameo there, so it's good to mention him, but when people think about threats to Goku, he's not really one that's a threat, especially now.
Yeah, that's true. He was somebody who's actually become more of Goku and Bulma's friend right now.
Yeah.
Even though he kind of does have some ulterior motives. But with that being said, who is the first true enemy that you would like to discuss on this list?
Well, Tao was the first super villain to really challenge Goku and defeat him in one-on-one combat. We mean actually like beat him clean. And then Goku had to beat him in the rematch. And I did a whole video on it over on my channel about Tao. He's one of my favorites, but I know he's kind of an underdog. A lot of fans go with some of the Z villains, but he's definitely one of my favorites. He's just so wacky. I mean, the guy flipped the chancleta to block a bullet. I mean, that's just next level stuff right there.
And one of the things I always loved about Tao is how he would take a pillar and he would throw it into the air and then jump on it and ride it for miles, you know? Like, if you're strong enough to throw a tree or something like that for miles, I'm pretty sure you're strong enough to jump that far too, but, you know, you gotta do it in style. So next up, I want to talk about an antagonist who Goku faced in the 22nd tournament of Dragon Ball. And that was someone who not only could challenge Goku in terms of physicality, but also in terms of his very ideals that he held. And that was the student of the Crane Hermit, Tien, or Ten Shinhan, who is one of my favorite adversaries that Goku faces throughout the course of the Dragon Ball franchise. And that arc really, for me, is one of the best arcs of all of the Dragon Ball franchise. What do you think about this?
Well, no matter what Tien Shinhan became later on in the series, he had two great fights with Goku in Dragon Ball at the 22nd and 23rd Budokais, and they're both great fights. They're both awesome, fun to watch, and you can never take that away from him. He's had great, entertaining fights, and as a result of that, I mean, I don't know if he's one of Goku's biggest enemies, but back in that era, I mean, he was right below Piccolo as far as like the opponent for Goku to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the first time they faced, even though it was kind of a fluke, he did beat Goku, so that's something that a lot of these villains can't really claim to have done. Moving on, of course, would have to be another major villain who also went on to become an ally of Goku's, and that is Piccolo Daimao, who I think we should probably just mix together in this inclusion with his son or reincarnation of Piccolo Jr.
Well, the thing about Demon King Piccolo is he was the first villain to actually put the Earth in threat. Like, Tao didn't really care about, you know, ruling or any of that stuff. Piccolo did, and he did defeat Goku and almost kill him. And also his henchman killed Krillin. So now is the first time we're starting to see villains that actually have an impact on the main characters dying was Piccolo. And he's a legendary villain. I mean, he's the first real evil guy, like truly evil dude. Tao's evil, but this guy, Demon King Piccolo, is pure evil, as we found out from Kami later on. Easily a great villain, I think. I think the fight with him at the end of the arc is great. Piccolo Jr. and Goku, of course, had, in my opinion, the best fight in all of Dragon Ball at the end of Dragon Ball. I think that's the best fight. And I don't mean just Dragon Ball that anime. I mean, out of all the Dragon Ball anime, Z Super, Goku versus Piccolo is my favorite fight. 23rd tournament, Goku versus Piccolo.
Yeah, it was a great arc and, a great villain in really both of his arcs. With King Piccolo, he was really this great mythological villain who, like you said, he was an embodiment of evil. He was basically the devil to the god that Goku met in Kami, and, they really took that to an interesting extreme in the next arc when Goku faced him to basically save not only the Earth, but also Kami, who was willing to kill himself to stop this guy. So I think that Piccolo is also the first villain that Goku had the chance to just ultimately kill him and spared him and kind of set in motion this thing that we saw with Vegeta, Frieza, and some of these other villains moving forward that, I think really stuck with him and shows again why Piccolo is one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise, because it goes from being this awesome villain to being a babysitter for Pan. Well, maybe not that part.
Well, Kwame is the one who has to deal with that problem, not you and I.
That's true. So moving on, let's get into Dragon Ball Z. And we have to first start off with a character who has become iconic for his relationship with Goku throughout the course of the story. And that would be the Prince of all Saiyans, Vegeta. And, his rivalry with Goku dates back, of course, to the Saiyan arc, but it continued throughout the entire franchise up until where we are right now in Dragon Ball Super, where the two of them are still sometimes at each other's throats, but the relationship is kind of mellowed out to the point where they are now friends. So, what do you think about Vegeta and Goku's rivalry, and Vegeta as a real true villain to Goku during the time that he was one?
I mean, it's just one of those things where we're getting to the iconic characters and he became one. His arc and the fact that they always went back to Vegeta. He fought Vegeta in the Saiyan saga. He fought Vegeta in the Buu saga as Majin Vegeta. He fought him in GT as Baby Vegeta. He fought Copy Vegeta. They have gone back to Vegeta so many times because he's popular, he resonates with people, and people want to see Goku and Vegeta fight. So as far as like constant drawing power goes, Toei certainly thinks that Vegeta is important. Toriyama, I suppose, does too. So he's up there. I mean, you can't even deny it. It's undeniable. He might be the best villain Goku ever fought.
Very possible. And he had the best mustache.
Maybe.
I had to pronounce it like Chris Sabat did. I shaved my mustache, you idiot!
Mustache. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, up next, of course, is a villain who very likely may take the top spot for Goku's greatest enemy, and that is Frieza. And Frieza, of course, was the galactic space tyrant, the emperor of the universe, who had no qualms about going around and wiping out entire civilizations and planets if they even inconvenienced him or posed any threat whatsoever. And that's what happened with him and Goku, and that really tied them together in not only a very personal way, but also in a way that really made Goku have some strong motivation for whatever inkling feelings he had towards his Saiyan people, kind of going after Frieza and avenging them in a Macbeth kind of way, so.
Well, Frieza is like another one of these super iconic villains because they kept bringing him back, and he was a high point of the manga. A lot of Dragon Ball fans in the United States got into Dragon Ball during the Frieza saga. Like, it was a big deal, and another guy who keeps coming back. Goku beats him, he comes back, Trunks beats him, comes back and makes cameos in some of the movies, cameos in some of the episodes in the other world, and Z, then in GT, him and Cell team up, then in Super he comes back, and he comes back again, and he's just always coming back, this Frieza. He is the Joker of Dragon Ball in my opinion, and I mean, he's my favorite character. My avatar is based on him. It's like Frieza with glasses on and a lightsaber, he means a lot to me. So I mean, you could make an argument. I think he is Goku's greatest enemy because he changed so much. The Frieza saga changed everything in Dragon Ball. Everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just look at Dragon Ball before Frieza and then Dragon Ball afterward, and that really shows a lot about his impact on not only Goku, but the entire franchise as a whole.
And in some ways, it wasn't better after Frieza. Some things were better, other things were not.
Yeah, like the pacing. It's certainly seen better days than the Frieza arc.
Right.
But then, of course, there is a character who is based on Frieza, in part because he also has his cells within him, as well as the cells of Goku and his friends. And that, of course, is Cell, the android, or Bio Jinzo Ningen from the future.
I like how you combine Japanese and English there. Bio Jinzo Ningen. But alright, go for it. Do you.
So, when it came to Cell, Goku trained for 3 years leading up to the android arc, and then for a year with his son in the time chamber chamber, and still he was unable to overcome Cell, and it was only really through Goku passing the torch to his son that he was able to defeat Cell, and that was after it cost him his own life and sacrifice that led to Goku deciding that maybe I shouldn't even come back at all, maybe I should leave it to the next generation. So I feel like in terms of somebody who really affected Goku and who affected the series in a big way, Cell would definitely have to be one of the top enemies in that regard.
Agreed, and I feel like with Cell, yes, he definitely affected Goku, and I know a lot of folks consider Cell to be Gohan's rival during that arc, and I see why. That was the final battle. But remember, when you're watching the arc or reading it, it's building up to a Goku-Cell fight. That's what they're building up to, and we get that fight, and then Toriyama subverts our expectations and goes, okay, well, I'm losing. I'm going to voluntarily submit and let Gohan fight, because that was his trump card. And it was good work by Toriyama. It was great storytelling, and it worked, I think, in my opinion. But remember, he was Goku's rival first. I mean, he wanted to fight Goku above anybody. He even said it himself.
Yeah, you know, even though Cell had basically had everything won before Goku and Gohan even stepped out of the time chamber, you know, beating Goku, the one that he was really created to defeat.
Right? It's like part of his mission parameters.
Yeah, it was really like that cherry on the top. So, you know, I feel like Cell was one of those villains who had everything won and then he lost in the epilogue.
In some ways, but it was good storytelling either way.
Yes, so moving on to the next enemy that Goku faced would be Majin Buu, who, unlike Cell and Frieza before him, really pushed Goku to a new level because of the fact that he was a force of nature. He was something that was completely unrelated to Goku, that still existed on Earth and still existed within the universe. It kind of challenged Goku's conceptions of leaving everything to the next generation and, you know, making it to where he had to step in and intervene even after he had died to put an end to something that would have put an end to the entire universe. So what do you think about him in terms of a force of nature villain, and do you think he really compares to some of the prior ones?
He doesn't have the same connective tissue with Goku, even though he did kill a lot of people, but Goku versus Kid Buu is such a fun fight, but it's not like one that was really built to getting there. It was just Toriyama kind of shaking his head around and trying to figure out how to close the arc out. So he does not have that same personal resonance as Frieza, and he doesn't have the same sort of, you know, the cells, the interesting, you know, we have to defeat ourselves type of story with Cell. So he was a force of nature, he was different, and I think he is the last villain in Dragon Ball Z. You know, it's a big deal, but at the same time, it's hard to put him in a list that's centered around Goku, because there wasn't really that much of a personal issue with him and Goku, to the point where Goku even asked to have him be reincarnated as a good guy. He didn't even do that for Frieza.
So let's move on to the next anime exclusive series in Dragon Ball GT before we get on to Super. And with Dragon Ball GT, this is a more interesting topic to cover when it comes to Goku's greatest enemies, because the fact of how the execution of some of these villains was, I guess I could put it. So in terms of like a villain who really measures up to prior villains, an enemy for Goku who really might have pushed him to that next level, who do you think is really worth standing out and being discussed?
There are cool villains that Goku faced off, like Legic, Ruldo, Super 17, but they didn't get enough screen time if you ask me. The big ones were, of course, Baby and the Shadow Dragons, and I feel like with the Shadow Dragons, there was no real emotional connection to Goku. Same thing with Buu. He was the final opponent, but he had no real connection with Goku. And then when you have somebody like Baby Vegeta, it is a rehash. It's like another Majin Vegeta. It's Vegeta again, but Baby as a villain, I think, is fantastic against all the Saiyans. And I really like Super Saiyan 4 Goku against Baby Vegeta, so I think he's the one that sticks out the most from GT. Everybody else, like, whatever.
Yeah, even though Baby wasn't 100% like Goku's villain, you know, he was the villain of the Saiyans, he's very similar to Frieza in the fact that he has that connected mythology and much greater connective tissue than a lot of other villains that Goku faces, because it was Goku's species who pushed Baby's species to non-existence.
It was a great backstory.
Yeah, it's always been one of the reasons why Baby is one of the more interesting villains in the Dragon Ball franchise. But getting into the newer continuation slash interquel in Dragon Ball Super, there are also some really interesting rivals for Goku along the way, but would you say that any of them truly stand out in terms of, you know, a truly great adversary or enemy for Goku that really helped to push him as a martial artist? Because I can definitely think of a couple.
Well, there's a bunch. I mean, we've got, obviously, Jiren is the one who pushed Goku into Ultra Instinct. That's a big one. Beerus was the one who even introduced Goku to God Ki, and that elevated his level. And then, of course, there's Goku Black, who was an evil Goku, and that's going to always be ranked up there. I think most Dragon Ball fans who watch Super are going to say Goku Black's their favorite villain because he was the only true villain, with the exception of Frieza in his arc, which was not very good in the anime version. Movie was not very good either, but it's not terrible. But it's Frieza again. We've already talked about him. You know, when it comes to Goku Black, that's the one that people see and Zamasu as like the real villain of the series, who was actually a bad person. He was not a good guy, and Jiren was a good guy. Beerus was too. They push Goku more, but are they really as evil as Goku Black? And the answer is no, neither one of them are. Same with Broly. He pushed Goku, but he's not evil.
So in terms of characters who really push Goku to their limit, you know, like you said, first off, of course, we had the introduction of the new Dragon Ball with Beerus, and, you know, it pushed Goku to a completely new height he had never experienced or even imagined in terms of being a god, you know, which unlocked a lot of what we saw in Dragon Ball Super. But Beerus went on more to be someone who was a friend of Goku or a great ally as opposed to a great enemy.
Yeah, and Jiren, they kind of tease that they might fight again, but he's not really a villain. He's a superhero, in fact. He made a couple of bad decisions, you know, when he tried to kill Goku's friends, which I think he was just irrational at the time. I don't think he meant to be that much of a prick. Even Toppo called him a coward. But he's, to me, an important part of Goku's development. We'll see where it goes going forward.
Yeah, so even though originally Goku Black was posed more as like a future Trunks villain, the way that they tied in Goku basically punching Zamasu in the face enough to where he's like, okay, I'm gonna kill my master and steal the time ring, you know, that kind of made him, you know, connected to Goku in that greater way, aside from the fact that he stole his body. So, you know, I think either of these three enemies right here really prove a great challenge for Goku. And like you said, Broly, he had to fuse with Vegeta to even stand a chance against Broly. So it really goes to show you just how overpowered Broly is, even in this version of Dragon Ball. So overall, when we're examining all of these different enemies and adversaries that Goku had encountered throughout the course of the Dragon Ball story, who do you think is truly his greatest enemy that he's encountered that pushed him probably more than anyone else, and who really helped to lead a change within Goku and the franchise as a whole?
I think it's got to be Frieza. I mean, Vegeta is also up there, but Frieza was the one that introduced Super Saiyan, which became the big transformation that they would constantly see. And he keeps coming back. He's still causing ruckus. He brought Broly to Earth, and he also helped Goku win for Universe 7. So I think Frieza is the greatest villain against Goku, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually have to agree with you in this case, because, like you said, Frieza really pushed Goku to that extreme. You know, in order to defeat Frieza, Goku had to achieve a legendary transformation. Frieza was truly that be-all, end-all villain, even though it wasn't the end of the story, that Goku had to overcome. The ultimate fighter and the most powerful being in the universe, at least at that point. And so I think, yeah, it has to be Frieza. And it explains why he keeps coming back, because not only does he draw, but he has a great dynamic with Goku.
Right, agreed.
So let us know your own thoughts down below in the comments. Who do you think is Goku's greatest enemy? Also, make sure to check out the other video, Goku's Greatest Masters, over on Geekdom 101, which this video is actually a follow-up to. And if you're new to this channel, then don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.